Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I am Francesco Corti, developer evangelist for Alfresco, and today we have another office hour talking about ADF and an example of application, mainly on content, on top of Alfresco content services. Together with me, you can see Ole, John, and Dennis. And I think you appreciate a lot Ole's hat, but also John's clothes and Dennis in person. I mean, before leaving the mic to them, and thank you guys for being here, I would like to share with you some short announcement, but instead of talking on the announcement, I would like to take a few minutes for the traditional and missed alignment on what happened since the last time from the latest office hour. So let me share my screen and okay. Guys, can you see my screen?
Yep, we see it.
Now, you probably not because I pushed the wrong button. Yes, exactly. So I will do it again. Okay, now can you see my screen?
There we go.
Okay, thank you, Ole. So what's happened since the last time into the Alfresco ecosystem? So as usual, we are not talking about news in general. We prefer to talk about Alfresco news. So first of all, I would like to recap what happened in the Alfresco ecosystem since October. The first information I would like to share with you, it's a vertical application from one of our partners. It's Alfresco the Alfred desktop. I suggest you to take a look at this because it's quite interesting. Also, it's an example of application on top of Alfresco content services in this case. I would like to remind that the 22nd of October, there is a new, brand new release of governance services. So here we have the old name that is going to be changed, but it's governance services, and with lots of enhancement from the governance team. So you can find the release note in the article to have some information about that. ADF 2.0 has been released, and we are here to talk about it. So probably I don't want to steal more time on the discussion. We will see more today about this, and Dennis is part of the team, and he can share information about that. So I think you are aware, and probably you should be aware, that our activity team is sharing on weekly basis an update about what they are doing and an updated roadmap and really exciting news in the activity stuff. So stay tuned, and of course follow Maurizio for the latest updates. From Harry Peak, the 28th of November, one great information, because to be more open and of course receive external contribution, the search services, the Alfresco search services is backup on GitHub, so the development will be more in clear, more updated there, and we will be able to receive contribution quite easily. Don't forget, guys, about the hackathon that will happen at the DevCon. So Axel Faust remind this to us. I will talk about the DevCon later on. Good news, because the job converter will be included in the next release of Alfresco content services. Thank you, Angel, for sharing. Another update is about the API Explorer of content services have been updated of the public link. Check this article and this post to have more information. It is quite recent. You can find it in our community portal. Talking again about process services, sorry, about Activity 7, so the open source project. You can find lots of Kubernetes stuff inside there, and exciting news also from Rafael Allegri on this topic. Again, on process services, so the enterprise version of Activity 7. So Alfresco process services powered by the Activity is available on AWS Cloud with a quick start. So check it out, and because it's a nice stuff to enable you in very few minutes on using process services. And I would like to remind you the latest Tech Talk Live on AWS Quick Start that recently we have this week. The latest community edition of the Alfresco Content Services, good news that we are on 6.0 version. So interesting news also on this stuff. I'm finished my update. Of course, I cannot finish without talking about the DevCon. So the DevCon will happen the 17th and 18th of January on Lisbon. The registration are open. As you can see, we will talk about lots of interesting stuff. So please don't forget to register today, because we have very few open ticket and open slots, so open registration for you to come. So join us. We will be happy to stay together and to see lots of announcements. So thank you for the time, and sorry guys for stealing the time to you and to the main topic. I want to leave the mic to John, and I will receive all of your questions in the YouTube chat, in the RC channel, and also on Gitter. So raise your question there. I will check, and I will ask to the guys here live. Thank you, John, for introducing the topic.
It's great. Thank you, Francesco. I'll just share my screen quickly. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yep. Excellent. Yes, so Ole, Dennis, and myself would like to talk today about an ADF, a working example. This is going to be a new open source project that we are releasing today. So today is the first public announcement of this project. Before we get into the details of that, so we'll just do some introductions. So I'll go first. My name's John Knowles. I'm a product manager at Alfresco. I've been here just about 2 years. My main responsibility is looking after client applications, but meaning web applications. I've taken over mobile just recently, and also the desktop sync product, and including the sync service. Prior to Alfresco, I spent about 8 years product managing in a UK software company, doing accountancy and tax software. Ole?
Yep, so my name is Ole Hejlskov. I'm product manager here at Alfresco. I look after the developer platform, so ADF and SDKs and the developer experience. Everything that ties in with the developers is right up my alley. I think most people watching this probably already know who I am, so I'll hand it off to Dennis.
Well, hello, my name is Dennis Vujka. I'm with the company for almost 3 years. Core ADF developer, and besides that, the tech lead of the application we're going to announce shortly. This is me.
Excellent.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so the agenda's looked quite short, but we've got tons of content to get through. I think we've got about 20 slides, and if the demo gods are with us, I'll attempt a live demo as well. Everything to go wrong. Okay, so we'll talk about example applications and why do we need them. So Alfresco is a great developer platform, provides all the building blocks that our developer community need to get up and running with applications quickly, whether that's from the REST APIs, if you're starting from as low as possible, all the way up to the UI components that you get from the ADF. The great thing about the ADF, as Ole reminds us frequently, is that it gets you 80% of the way there. So getting the ADF up and running is really easy. It takes 10 minutes to get all the packages installed and everything like that, and then you can go away and start composing your application. But we figured that having an example application would actually help people get playing with the ADF more quickly. I did a little test earlier, and it took me about 2 minutes to get this new project out of GitHub and actually running on my machine. And I'm not a developer, so 2 minutes is quite something. And when you deploy this application, you can log in to existing deployments of the platform and start experimenting with it. It's good stuff. Another good thing, a good reason for having examples is about conceptualizing what is possible. And by this, I mean really trying to visualize what does the ADF give to end users. It provides some really great context of the components and the APIs and what the platform can do. We're going to use this application to demonstrate some of the key platform capabilities. So what are the must-have things when it comes to content management? And hopefully when you're talking to clients and your internal users, it'll help visualize, put some visualization on what the ADF could do for them. So they can start to think about what use cases are you looking to solve.
One other thing to add around all of this is that we briefly touched on this during Tech Talk Live last week, and I'm still writing on a blog post to talk about it. But when you generate your application using the Yeoman generators, the biggest problem is that how much is too much and how little is too little. So we settled with 2.0, we settled on a very small footprint. So you get a very basic application up and running. And we've been talking a lot about, well, what is the right level of information components and functionality we should wire in, because the more functionality we add in, the more complex it gets, the more intimidating it can be when you need to get something up and running. So we want to present more examples where we show best practices of how to wire things together, like John just said, on how we can conceptualize it and how we can make it a bit more real, but also something that just looks beautiful. And it's going to show you the art of the possible of what you can actually do with ADF today. So a bit more context. And we're still figuring out on getting good feedback from the 2.0 release on what should we include in the generators and what shouldn't we. Again, tying back to previous conversation we've had around the SDK, where we talk about, should we include, like today we include both the embedded workflow, we can include a sample content model, a workflow, we already talked about workflow, the model, some web scripts and stuff. We put all of that in there, so whenever you need to start a new project, you have to go in and either remove them, or a lot of people use their own templates. So it's really, really hard to gauge the right level of how much we put in there. So hopefully with us releasing this new thing, that's going to help spark that conversation even further.
Yeah, art of the possible is something we discuss a lot, isn't it, Ole? And yeah, the last point on this slide really is about sample applications. They're just real live apps that you can get your hands on and play with. And as well as them being something you can play with and visualize, it also shows best practices. Dennis and the team put together an application using the best practices that we've come up with for the ADF. And this is going to help developers get up to speed with the framework much more quickly, and actually do things in a way that's upgradable in the future and extendable and everything like that. Okay, so this is the application we're announcing today. We're calling it the Alfresco sort of example content application. Satisfies a really simple use case for browsing files and viewing and things like that. So that's a screenshot of it. The concept behind this really is a simple user interface, something really simple that makes accessing content already stored in Alfresco really easy. I talked to a number of customers when I joined, and some of the organizations feel that their end users find other applications a little bit more difficult to use. Traditional ECM systems, maybe it's Documentum or OpenText products, they're just a bit clumsy to use, a bit too complicated. They put too much in front of the users. So simple UIs will actually onboard more of their users at the end of the day. And what we're demonstrating with this example app is how the complexity of content management can be really made simple using the ADF. And taking what we've built here and customizing it, extending it to have your own tailored experiences that satisfy your specific sort of user needs.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning that what we're releasing today or open sourcing today is not a product. This is very much a living thing. It's work in progress, and that'll be evident when we start looking into some details. So yeah, I can't actually remember what the next slide is.
We'll go with this one. So yeah, this is built only using ADF 2.0 components. We have not done anything special with these components. We've put some styling on top of them, but they are all out-of-the-box components that you can get hold of today from the ADF project. We're only using REST APIs, so there's no private APIs, no web scripts in the background or anything funky like that. So it is compatible with the Alfresco Content Services 5.2.2 and also Community Edition from back in July. So it's all REST APIs underneath the skin of this. And what we're using the example app internally for is really to drive the direction of the ADF. We're finding that if we build the ADF and some of the specific content components with a use case in mind, that really helps get the components in the right sort of format for external use as well. So what I mean by this is we took the document list and started to break it down into more granular pieces, and you'll see that granularity coming through in the ADF 2.0.
And I think it's really worth mentioning that we have, when I look at the ADF backlog and how we drive requirements, I get asked this a lot from customers and partners in the community on how do we define the roadmap, how do we define the priorities, and it's really all about how we need to go and talk to different personas with different needs. Obviously, sipping our own champagne like this and building a new content example app where we can show best practice and everything, that forces us to go and put on the consumer mindset of the ADF, which showed a number of things that we wanted to increase. So when we talked about during the Tech Talk Live, where we've gone in and split up the document list into several components, so splitting out the pagination, splitting out the breadcrumbs and the toolbars and everything, that's all stuff that we've driven from developing this app. And we've been going at it for quite a while, and we figured now it's in a good enough shape to start sharing with the broader community and see what kind of feedback we get. But really, it's all about seeing what internal requirements we have for building something like this. But we also talk to partners and customers day in and day out. I have probably 3 or 4 different calls with customers and partners every week where I talk about how they're using ADF, how they're developing with it, what the kind of missing pieces are and everything. And sure, we have big beats that we still need to deliver in ADF, but that's how we kind of get all those different sources of input to help prioritize things. And definitely the input we've gotten from this project alone has helped a lot on how we think about the components, how we structure them, how we build them. So this is definitely a good working relationship between the two teams.
That's a good point you bring up about sipping the Alfresco champagne, because that's a mantra we have internally for all of our products. Alfresco is customer zero for everything that we ship. We run Alfresco Content Services for our own content management needs, and we also run Alfresco Process Services for managing our own internal workflows. So that's about being customer zero, and what we're doing here with this app is being developer zero.
John, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry for interrupting you, but questions are coming, and so probably you want to start facing, and of course, as usual, questions are good things because it means interest. So one question from the YouTube chat is, any comments about single sign-on and as an ADF app, for example? So what about single sign-on?
So I can talk to that one. Single sign-on with ADF is a bit tricky because ADF is created to work across both content services and process services. We need to unify the single sign-on approaches we have within those two products before we can really do proper single sign-on for everything. The JavaScript API, which everything is built on top of, allows us to inject headers, and that will allow us to do stuff like if we had OAuth 2 across everything, that would be quite easy to do. Or if we're using SAML2 with a Barrow token, we could also do that quite easily. But in most cases, you would need some kind of server-side component to help do this. Like if you need to do a SAML implementation for single sign-on and you need to use all the assertions and then do HTTP posts, then you would need some kind of server-side backend. The usual setup that we've seen is that people use a JHipster or Spring Boot application and then wrap that around their ADF application. Then they have this backend where they can do all the things, like you can pull in Spring Security, and that allows you to quite easily do a SAML implementation. Same thing goes for Kerberos if you want to go that route. But and you can also use that Spring Boot application to go in and do the proxying for you to avoid all the CORS issues. So there's a few ways of dealing with it. Usually my go-to answer is, well, what kind of single sign-on are you looking for? How are you implementing it, and which services are you using? Because if you're using both content services and process services, that's going to be the big issue here. I'd definitely say this is something we have in the roadmap that we need to jump on. Initially, there's not a lot of things we can do from an ADF point of view to support this, but we can create examples, we can create best practices around how you could create maybe a server-side component to deal with some of this. I think one of the first things that was coming in now is that we need to create an example on how you can integrate for example, the content application here with SAML on top of ACS. That would be a good initial thing to do, but we need to do some investigations and stuff. But there is a ticket in the backlog for the ADF team to go and look at this early next year.
Another question from Bindu about, so this example will be compatible with 5.2 content services? So yep. Which version? Probably you can spend a few words on which version.
Yes, it's on the screen here. So if, it's fully tested with 5.2.2. There may be a few bugs in the APIs from 5.2.1 if you have 5.2.1 deployments, but it is reliant on the latest REST APIs. So we fully test against 5.2.2. And all of the REST API changes, I believe, that went into 5.2.2 were also released in Community Edition back in July.
Okay. Yeah, and I could also add that without remembering on top of my head all the changes we had in the APIs, you could probably make this work with the 5.2.0 release, but there might be some quirks in there. Some of the main things are around download a zip is not available in 5.2.0, so there's a few nuances in there, but the majority of it would still work. But your mileage may vary. As John said, we test with 5.2.2.
There were some of the other REST API changes that we drove as part of this development was just adding some extra information to the Node API requests. So we wanted to get the path for things when you were doing favorites, for example, or the path when you're getting shared links and things like that. But we'll see that in the demo shortly.
Okay, we have another question, but probably we can take this for the end because it's a little bit more generic about share heads-on. If we plan to have also ADF heads-on, but we can take this now or at the end of the presentation as you prefer, guys. I will remind you if we don't treat it now.
It will come naturally in a few seconds.
Yeah, let's go through some of these. So also this application demonstrates engaging user experiences. You saw from the screenshot there, we've got a great Google material design standard that our internal experience design team are pushing us towards. And yes, as we said, this is available now. We opened up the project earlier on today. You can access it from the GitHub repository here. And I've got a short link at the end if you don't want to write down the really long one. And we've also we're going to open up our Jira project, and that's something I need to do after this call. And in the Jira project, you will see all the stories that we've implemented as part of developing this application. So you can see the acceptance criteria, you can see the designs from the XD team. And there's also you'll see some of the backlog as well, things we'd like to work on next. Maybe a couple of bugs as well that you can pick up and contribute to. That would be awesome. But yes, it's available now. Before we get into the detail of it, though, we wanted to address the elephant in the room and get this out of the way. So what is the elephant in the room? What about Alfresco Share? The content app does not replace Alfresco Share. And there are a number of reasons for this. Share is a really important application, not just for Alfresco, but also for the community that's out there, whether that's paying customers, partners, community users. It is an important application and we continue to invest in it. Customer support is available for Alfresco Share, and we were not planning to provide support for the content app at this time. Developer support is available for the ADF, but not sort of typical end user style customer support. So there's a key difference there. And we recognize that the developer community, partners and customers, everyone is heavily invested in Share, as ourselves. The Alfresco governance services or records management team, they still develop in Share. They develop the RM module and it is shipped as part of Share. So Share is here to stay. And this is just an example application that sits alongside demonstrating the power of the ADF. Another interesting point here is about the collaboration features. Because this is a simple user experience, we're only looking to cover the kind of basic content file management type use cases. So features like wikis and blogs, calendars and data lists and so on, they're not features we would look to put into this example application at this time.
And we've also added that the sites functionality is something we treat them a bit differently, and we'll see more of that. But we don't plan on doing the site dashboards and everything. The main feedback we get when we go talk to customers about how they use Share, most people just go straight to the document library of the site. They skip right through the dashboard. There's also one of the reasons why we added in the default screen when you log in. You go straight to this this part of Share. We know that people just want to get to the documents they need, and the content application here really does allow you for that.
That's exactly right. So a number of customers have said to me, just get my users to their files more quickly. So yeah, the content app is an example code project that you can go and get from GitHub today. What we're demonstrating is the components working together in a real live application. And hopefully this gives everyone a great leg up when it comes to building some sort of custom content orientated applications. And as I mentioned earlier, developer support is available for the ADF, but customer support is not something we're looking at.
Yeah, and again, just wanted to put emphasis on that this is not a product. This is not something we sell. This is not something we release. We don't release any of the binaries or anything. If you want to use this, it's an open source project. You can go in, you can clone it, you can build it yourself. But this is an open source product. We would love to get collaboration on it. It's not a product that we ship, support, and sell, and it is again full open source, works both enterprise and community. So as you said, with the leg up, one of the things that we like ADF's vision is to like get you 80% of the way there. Maybe this application can help you get 90% of the way there. That is great, but still, as with ADF, we aim that there will be some customizations on top of it, like you have in any kind of project, anyways.
And these two things can coexist very nicely. Alfresco Share has some really great deep functionality that some users in an organization might want. And if you're going to build an ADF application that has a simpler use case in mind, there's no reason why you can't run them side by side.
Yep. So I just wanted to pause here for a second because I bet there's loads of questions, and let's time box it because we do have demos and everything else we want to go through. So let's do 5 minutes of questions and then see at the end if we have time to circle back. It's not because I don't want to talk about the Share and all the controversy there's around it. One thing I would say is that we get a lot of people freaking out these days, and it's like everyone is acting like we've officially said that we've deprecated Share. It won't be available with 6.0 and it won't work with 6.0. That is not the case. Share is still around. It is still there with 6.0. We have a team working on it. We're actively maintaining it and bug fixing, adding stuff to it. So it might not be at the same pace as it was a few years ago, but it certainly hasn't gone away. So I just wanted to make that very, very clear. So Francesco, any top questions you want us to tackle?
Well, there is a huge discussion and parallel discussion on the YouTube chat. Let me say, of course, lots of discussion around the Share. So I think you did a good job, guys, to underline the Share maintenance mode. Just some concerns, as you probably know, around the fact that Share is here to stay, and this has been clearly confirmed from John, you, Ole. Of course, the discussion is around if it's planned to improve and enhance Share, and how. So if the investment are dedicated to maintain Share or to improve Share. Probably you could spend a few words, even if honestly, from my point of view, John has been really clear. In parallel, there is a discussion on YouTube chat talking about the authentication using, for example, SAML for content services or Kerberos for process services. But again, more than question, we have a a big discussion around, and it means excitement about the technology and the stuff. I don't know if you want to comment something or you want to go ahead, because we don't have direct questions.
Okay, well, if you don't have direct questions, let's move on to the good stuff.
Yeah, I will interrupt you if we will have direct questions.
Okay. All right, so moving on to what does this example application do? As you can see here, that we're covering some very basic file action type use cases. Browsing files, so we're providing access into the My Files area. We're calling it personal files in this example app. We're also providing access to what we're calling file libraries, which is essentially the document library from a site. And then we've come up with some filtered views that we think demonstrate how to make accessing the stuff that's important to you much easier. And then we've got creating content is another sort of area that we're interested in. That's sort of basically uploading files and folders. And I'll show you how that works in the demo. And then actions on those files, moving, copying, deleting them, favoriting them, managing the trash can, that kind of thing. And then viewing content as well. So we've implemented the new file viewer components from the ADF, and that has the beginnings of the viewing documents and getting transformations out of the repository, playing back audio and video. And finally, search. We've implemented the ADF's live search components, and the next big feature we're really keen to work on in the new year is going to be an advanced search with faceted results and things like that. But those will be going into the ADF first, and then we'll try and implement it into the application as well. But the important point to note here is that ADF component was updated in ADF 2.0 to use the REST API, which is getting results out of the Solr backend. So Dennis, would you mind spending a few minutes just telling us about how it was made from a technical standpoint?
On the main things. So first of all, this is the fully Angular CLI application. So all the books out there on the Angular development are compatible. So you get started and you can generate components, events, you can run production builds. Everything CLI provides is already enabled for you. We also have as it was mentioned, it is a fully ADF-based application with a very nice styling and some minor glue just to make components run together. It has full I18N support. So besides 18 languages for coming with the ADF, we provide 18 languages also for the application. And more important, how to integrate both these internal I18Ns together. That was one of the main questions, I think, on GitHub channel for a long time. Another important thing is the Docker support. We now fully embrace the Docker. We provide you with all the files needed to create your own images and to publish to the Docker Hub. And moreover, the improved production setup as we see it for you to get started with. So you will be able to get the fully ready running application in your own Docker account in 2 minutes. And finally, it runs with the Electron. So if you want to have some desktop friendly applications and cross compatible with the Linux Windows OS, you can run this in the Electron wrapper. More things I think will come later, but just to say this is supported and this is available for you.
The Electron thing I think is really interesting. You did an experiment for me one evening, didn't you, and produced me an Electron app that I could run from my Mac really easily. How long did that take you?
Half an hour. And it will take you 2 minutes to get the application up and running on the 3 platforms. Just from the jump start, yeah. It's very interesting.
This is an area we might start doing a little bit more experimentation with in the new year, but it's quite exciting. And the reason we're getting excited about it is when you look at companies like Slack and Microsoft, Trello, they're all producing applications using Electron these days. So it's quite compelling. And we figure you could probably do some interesting integrations with the desktop whilst keeping the main application UI the same. So some interesting things for people to think about when talking to their clients and users about what do they need, what problems are they trying to solve. Okay, so we'll go through the features quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on this because time is ticking on and we've got a live demo to get through as well. Okay, so personal files. What we're showing here, as I mentioned earlier, is essentially the content that comes out of the user's home in this part of the repository. And we've built a files component that actually pulls together the breadcrumb along the top of the page, pulls together the file list component, or document list components, and also the pagination at the bottom. And then when you select a file, you get a toolbar component. So all of those components are put together and put into our own files component. And this is using the REST Nodes API. File libraries. So this is the term that we're coining for what is essentially sites. And it is the sites document library that we're displaying here. I think Dennis would say we're doing some clever routing when it comes to what happens when you access one of these sites, because we bypass the folder that stores the document library and get users straight into it, and then we display the breadcrumb in a context that makes sense for this application. At the moment, this feature is just showing you sites that a user is a member of. We've got items in our backlog to do where we want to start displaying other sites that someone might want to join, perhaps even creating a site or changing the members of a site, that kind of thing. But essentially at the moment, this is for end users to access existing sites they're members of. And you can see here we've built this using the same components again, and we've collated those into a libraries component. And this is using the sites API. Shared files. The shared files one, this is the wrong screenshots, but the shared files section of the application will actually aggregate all of the content that has been quick shared. So you would log into Alfresco Share and quick share a file. And this is just a place where all of those files can be listed in a single location. We're using the shared files or shared links API to collate this information. We don't actually have a feature yet to be able to create a shared link. So this could be an interesting contribution to receive from the community. Please consider adding, contributing features that we haven't yet got to, because that would be awesome, really good to have. Recent files. This is just showing, it's a Solr query, and this is just showing content that the user has added or edited within the last 30 days. A relatively simple one there. And we'll have a look at how this works when I do a demo in a minute. Favorites, as it says, collects all of the favorites for the user in one place. One thing I noticed when I started out Alfresco was that the favorites seem to be all collated on a site-by-site basis. And what I wanted to do was see favorites from all around the repository. So figuring having a list at a higher level would actually make this easier. And we've also built a trash can UI, so you can see here where the file was originally deleted from, and you can restore it, permanently delete it as need be. When an admin user logs in, obviously they will see items deleted by all users, and if you're logging in as a normal user, you'd only see stuff that you had deleted. All right, I'll jump off onto a quick demo then. Before I get into actually demoing the product or the application, I'll just show you the GitHub page. So here is our GitHub repository. And Dennis was talking about the Docker files and making it easy to get this up and running. Is there anything you'd like to add about anything in here, Dennis?
No, I think we got a lot of documentation and examples how to get it running. So you can create the Docker image locally. We got even the Docker Compose for you to test everything locally, and it takes like half a minute to publish it to the official public Docker Hub, and then consume from it in any type of application. So we're very excited to give these configurations for people to play with.
And you mentioned documentation there. So documentation Dennis is referring to is available here. The Docker documentation, it's a nice little guide there to help people getting things set up. There's also a building guide, so how to actually get it up and running. It's really simple. Even I managed it being a product manager. This is way out of my comfort zone, but it was 4 commands once I had help installing Node and Git and all of those things. But 4 commands, 2 minutes later, it was running locally on my machine with my local install of Alfresco. We also took a little bit of time to explain some of the features. So kind of what we just covered then, but screenshots and trying to sort of highlight the different areas that may be of interest if you're constructing your own application and you want to see, well, where does this search component come from? We've tried to link to the relevant places in the ADF components catalogs. So side navigation you can see here. And the team have also spent a little bit of time putting together some guides for you. So there's a guide here on internationalization and how to change the languages, even customizing the terminology that's in the English language, obviously. There's some stuff about cores, also configuration when it comes to the configuration file that sits inside the application distribution folder. We try to make it really super simple to change the logo, the header color, and even updating how the pagination is displayed. And then the last one was about the side navigation. So we've taken the side navigation and actually made it a configuration. So it should be super easy to just add a new option in here, create your own component, and off you go. Okay, so this is the standard ADF login. And I'm logging just into a local Alfresco, as I said. And here is our example content application. What a user might want to do is create a new folder. So they're going to add some new content. So I can hit the create folder button, type in a name, add a description if I want to. And you can see the folder's rendered instantly. When it comes to adding content, with obviously under the new button, you could click this and then you'll get your local file system browser. Makes it easy just to select a file or even select a folder. And we've also got drag and drop capabilities. So I can drag these three files over. Use my mouse. And I can either drop them straight into the root folder, or I can even drag and drop straight into a particular folder. This uploader is persistent, so a user can continue navigating around the system using the ADF uploader whilst the uploads are in progress, which is quite handy. And here we can see some files. I can double click on a picture, brings up a nice image, and this is the beginnings of our new file viewer components from the ADF. Multi-select is available in here through a key press and clicking, and I can then perform various actions on them. So I can delete a file, and if I decided I didn't want to delete those, I can click on undo action. There's a little notification that pops up, and I can quickly restore that file back into the folder. I can make these favorites really easily as well, just by tagging that, and that toggles the favorite flag on for that content. In this case, I've uploaded a project folder and it's in my personal files, but actually I need this to be within a site. So I can choose the move action from the menu. And this all brings up the destination picker components the team have been working hard on for 2.0. And I can now browse into the file libraries areas and quickly get into a site where I want to move this to. If I decide I don't want it in there, I can undo it, and that will essentially move it back, which is takes it out of the original location. And for things like undoing copy, we do a hard delete, and the hard delete means that it doesn't end up in the trash. So if you copy something somewhere by accident, you don't pollute your trash can with extra content. Talked a little bit earlier about the file libraries. So this is essentially a list of sites that this user is a member of. We can see the status of the site, whether it's private or public. The folders, and I can see the files here. Got a couple of things I didn't mean to upload, so I can just get rid of those. And with the document viewer, we're also requesting transformations from the server, so this PowerPoint can get transformed into a PDF and then displayed. We've got quite a nice layout here. Some features we're going to work on with this next will be adding some more actions on the top, eventually some thumbnails on the side, and hopefully an info drawer with some metadata. And that's one of the things we'd love for someone to contribute, actually, is taking the info drawer component that's available in the ADF today and seeing if you can plug this into the application. That would be really good. Moving into recent files, we can see here all of the stuff that I've uploaded recently. I can jump into the location straight from there, so I can go straight into the containing folder for that item. And you can also open up items from recent files as well, so I don't actually need to go to the location of where the content's actually stored. Things I've favorited, you've got the same actions in here. I can open them up, or jump into the location where they're stored. Some useful links. And then we've got the trash can as well. So if I was to restore this file, I get a little notification at the bottom. And this link then takes me straight into that location. So I've restored the file. I don't need to think about, well, where did that actually go? I can just click a link and it can be taken straight over there. And last but not least, we've got the search components. So I can search for words. We get a bit of search term highlighting coming through from the Solr backend. And when I select a file from there, it just opens it up in the preview nicely. And then obviously we have a sign out component as well. Dennis talked a little bit earlier about the localization and I18N. In the configuration file, you'll also find some config to turn on the languages menu. And the languages menu would sit under here, and you'll see a pop out with them all. But actually, for my use case, I would expect the users to have their browser set in their local languages. Okay, that's quite a rapid demo of the content app so far. Let me get back into the slides.
That was a great demo, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you cannot believe how many discussions we have in the chat, and really exciting. Also feedback of every kind. Just one clarification, because it's not a clarification. A topic that is quite common, and probably it's correct and interesting also to have a brief clarification on this. So the question could sound like, I try to summarize, of course, because believe me, there is a long discussion in the RC chat and not only there. What about, so let's say we have seen this example as you were telling John that it is not a supported application. So it's something really different, for example, from share or unofficial supported services. Do you think we can say that from a Alfresco perspective, this is a strategy? So can we say that we have the strategy to release example and not to release supported stuff? So Ole, John, and Dennis, of course, do you want to comment this, please?
That is a great
question. Oh, sorry. Please, I have another question, but believe me, sure, they are coming very fast, so sorry to interrupt you. You can take this, then I will ask them more. Thank you.
John, you want to have a stab at it, or you want to point at me?
No, you carry on.
So this is a tough one to answer, and the honest answer is we don't know. The strategy is that we have share in place. We continue to maintain it. It continues to be there. That is the supported app. The reason why this app is not supported is not because we've made a strategy to say we're only going to do example apps. On the other hand, we haven't made a strategy that says we're going to build a replacement app or a content app or anything. We haven't made decisions around it. What we are doing now is we're building out this application to help drive the requirements to make sure that we have the framework level things in place to enable these kind of applications. Now, could this be an application that's supported in the future? Definitely. I don't know. We don't have a firm answer on it. This is something we're discussing within product management. But as you can see, what we just seen in the demo is everything it does right now. I honestly expected there to be a lot of conversation around, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Why can we edit the metadata? Why can't we edit the rules, the permissions, why don't we have search? There's lots of missing gaps in here. If we were to go out and say, oh, here's a new supported application, a lot of people would look at us wrong and or weird and say, are you sure about that? Because there's quite a lot of things missing in here. So I'd say let's pick up that discussion again at DevCon, but probably it's going to take us some more time to figure out what it is we're going to do. I think unofficial, this is my view of the world. If we're going to have a new supported application, this would not just be a content app or a process app. This will be something that sits in between, that has both some governance, has some content and some process in there, and gives you a good working environment for both. But that is my view of the world. That is not to say that is what Alfresco will go out and do. Again, this is still up for debate, and that is the honest answer.
That's a good point you bring up there about the feature gaps. A good content management system needs to provide versioning, metadata, and those other features. Those are relatively new components added to the ADF in the last release. And as you can see, this application does not contain those yet. and managing file libraries and sites and permissions is all, there's a reasonably good list of things still to do. So could this be in the future, as Ole said? Maybe. We'll see how it goes. It's great
John,
such conversation.
From my side.
One suggestion, John, can you please stop sharing the screen, because I think it's good if we see your face. It's more interactive. No.
I wasn't sure if the camera was on or not.
Sorry, Dennis, to interrupt you. Then I have other question, guys. The questions are flowing, and it's some interesting stuff. Dennis, I interrupted you. Sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that besides what was already said, the application at the same time answers hundreds of questions, literally, coming on the Gita channel. So how do I do this? How do I do that? What is the best practice to do this or that feature? So I really hope people will find a lot of answers in the source code starting from today.
Yes, that's a very good point.
Another question is about the performance of the undo button. Probably this is a little bit more technical question. Do you want to take this, Dennis, or again, Ole or John, if you want to take, feel free.
What's the question?
The question is about the performance. So if it is fast enough, the undo action that you were showing.
Fast in what way? How they appear and disappear, or the performance of moving the files around?
Yeah, so the question is probably extremely technical because, of course, first of all, I know who raised Angel raised it, so it's probably about the script and the workload behind on a server side, on a client side. If you experience some kind of slow actions or not, you can say no. Of course, if we have some comments on that.
And typically, the undo action is just the reverse of the initial action. So, for example, you upload a file and then you decide to undo that upload. We call it cancel in the UI. That's a delete. It just deletes them. So it's calling the Node API and doing a delete action.
So it's close to a delete action. It's not exactly an undo.
Yeah,
so it's not a sort of okay. Also, it's probably this is the answer.
Yeah, from the user's perspective, it's undo because they're undoing the move, for example, or they're undoing the copy. But when you undo a copy, all we do is delete the file that was copied. With an undo move, we move it back. It's a reverse move.
Okay. So another question is if we plan to have accessible audit APIs through the user interface. So, for example, to see document and folder audit trails from the YouTube chat.
So that is currently an API gap. We don't have V1 REST APIs to cover the audit trails. I know I helped write the stories and the requirements for that API, and that's sitting in the queue and waiting to be executed. Once we have that API, which is a bit more sensible than the one that exists today, it should be fairly easy to do. Because if we go and use the existing one, I have some performance concerns around it because it's not quite fast to go and look up audit information, especially if we're doing on a single node or trying to do some filtering on it. It can be quite slow to work with. So there are some platform enhancements coming up on that, and when we have those APIs, that could be something we could add in. I just wanted to correct one thing I said earlier when I said that we don't talked about the managed permissions and folder rules and everything, and that we don't have those features yet. We still have them in the platform. They are all there, but we don't have them surfaced in the app yet for various reasons. Either like the audit API, we don't have the APIs for it, or the new V1 APIs that we want to use, or that we simply haven't gotten to it yet. Good example is search, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And I'm just being a bit conscious of time because we have a few more things and slides we want to share, and we are running out of time, and we do have a hard stop on top of the hour. So yeah. Maybe maybe one more question, and then we move on with the slides.
Let's do the latest question, even if the more calm. How many components or UR widget or stuff are available for record management. So I mean, considering 100% the entire coverage of the record management features currently, how many of them we still have on ADF?
Currently, we don't have any at this point. We have a story in the backlog that's in the current sprint to go and integrate the OpenAPI specification for the new 2.7 governance services release, because they introduced a brand new V1 API that's really great to work with and everything, and we want to include that in the JavaScript API. Once that's in there, that opens up a lot of possibilities, and we need to start exploring what that means and what we can do with it. But we don't have any RM-specific components at this stage. But I would expect that the 2.1 release of ADF will have the JavaScript API included in there. So that starts to open up that possibility. But that's not something we're planning anytime soon.
I will take the other questions and contact one by one, because again, we want to reply. Please, guys, go ahead for showing the content that is extremely valuable. Again, lots of excitement around that. Thank you.
I think, Ole, it was RM 2.6. I could be wrong, but yes, that was.
You are correct. That was 2.6.
A November release of RM. So the REST APIs are brand new for that. So next question is, what's in store next? This is kind of a roadmap slide we use internally. So the first column here showing what we've been delivering over the last 6 to 8 months within the content app team, really enhancing the ADF, better component granularity. We did a lot of work on the uploader with our XD team, trying to get some good interactions there. Then we've got what we're releasing today, and that's the application composed out of the ADF components. And thinking about some really basic end-to-end use cases. So you can now demonstrate what the ADF can do for content services in something that makes sense from a user's perspective. Orange is the most interesting column. Enhanced search is top of our list. We are working with XD and the search team at the moment to start defining what that component is going to look like, and obviously with Ole as well. And we'll hope to see some of that coming through in 2018. We've got the first...
just one quick clarification on the enhanced search. When we say enhanced search, we are looking at the full faceted search experience. We have some great stories and great wireframes and designs coming out, so I think that's going to be a huge, great improvement to ADF overall. And again, just to emphasize that this is not components that will go into this application. This is all, when we build this functionality out inside this application, all of those components will be ADF components. So again, good example of how this team is driving a lot of the content capabilities we have in ADF while still having a real use case in mind.
Yeah, some metadata as well. So there's an info drawer component already available, and there's a basic file properties card that you can insert into that metadata info drawer component. Before we consider putting it into like this example application, we're going to look to extend what's possible and start to look at custom metadata as well. So what can we pull out of the repository from custom metadata models? There's a versioning manager that became available just before ADF 2.0 was released, so we'll look to integrate that at some point in the future. And then I want to look at public sharing, so when you were creating a quick share from this app would seem like a useful thing to have, and managing site libraries, permissions, allowing people to comment on content, create folder rules and so on, all of the good stuff that people know from the document library and share. And then we've got a future backlog, these are sort of aspirational direction we want to go in, but really I think it's this orange column that is the priority for us over the next 6 to 12 months. So it's an open source project. Can people contribute? Of course, that's exactly why we're open sourcing this project today. People were looking for something simple to get their teeth into. The versions manager component from the ADF, that's just a new action into the toolbar, and then displaying it on screen in a dialogue or whatever. So we'd love to see some contributions from people. On our documentation, there is a policy around how to do a good contribution, and we'd love to see it. It would be really good to see stuff coming in from the community. And obviously, you guys are going to pick this up and run it on your locals. If you find some bugs, please raise an issue and have a go at fixing it, which would be awesome to see.
Yeah, and just wanted to emphasize one thing. We're not just opening it to get contributions. We're opening this to share it with the world, because we believe in release early and release often. So we've sat on this for a while now, and believe now we have like critical mass for us to share this with the world. We'd love to see contributions. We'd love to see collaboration on this. So if you have something bigger you're wondering about, please get in touch with us. We want to have those conversations and see how we can drive this forward together.
Well, there was the open in office component you mentioned to me the other day.
Yes, so there was I think it was Miguel Asla from Kensoft who did the AOS plugin for ADF. He did that during the hackathon. That would be a lovely addition to see integrating this into the content application. And otherwise, it's something we can look at during the hackathon at DevCon. So lots of good opportunities.
And yeah, that's another good thing for the hackathon at DevCon. This will be a good app for people to start hacking about with. So just recap some stuff you probably already know. Where can you get help? Well, we've got our documentation available in the github.io address. We've also got the ADF community on our community.alfresco.com, along with our Gitter channel and everything else. As Francesco said at the start, Alfresco DevCon 2018, be great to see people talking about this app in Lisbon. And also come along and see our very own Dennis. He's going to do a half-hour presentation about this product application. Obviously the community and the Gitter channel. You can get indirect access to some of our ADF developers, including Dennis, via the Gitter channel. And Alfresco also offers other services like developer support, and I think there's some Alfresco University courses coming soon, Ola, is that right?
Yes, we are working soon. I don't know, but yes, we are working on that.
They're coming soon. Okay, so just to wrap up at the end here, DevCon 2018, did you want to add some things about that, Francesco?
Okay.
Have we got more questions as well?
Well, believe me, huge of question, huge of discussion, but we don't have time, and we have a hard cut. I don't know if you have something, guys, to add. And again, first of all, thank you very much. Really interesting, really appreciated. John, you can probably stop sharing your screen. Do you have something to add to close the discussion now? Not to close the discussion in general?
No, have a great Christmas, everyone. Hope you enjoy looking at the source code and go and have fun with it.
I have one last request before we end off. Actually, one comment and then a request. First comment is, I hope you guys enjoy this. This is a great thing to try and pick apart and have a look at and give it a spin during the holiday break now that's coming up. And really the only last thing there's to say, John, I know that your sweater, your jumper, Christmas jumper, will light up. So can you please show us? It is an awesome jumper.
I'll get this working. Yes, in England we love our Christmas jumpers.
There we go. That is awesome.
It's Christmas jumper day at work today. Where's your hat, Ola?
It was too hot. I took it off.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, sorry about that.
So thank you very much, guys, for being here, for doing lots of things and the discussion. I'm sorry if we did not have the chance to reply to all the questions, but we are available also to discuss about the different approach, share ADF and various stuff. Write us. My mail is francesco.corti@alfresco.com. I will be very happy to receive your question, and of course share the question and the discussion with the guys, Dennis, John, Ole, and all the other guys in the organization. Talk to you soon, guys. Thank you very much. I hope to see you all again on this discussion at the DevCon, and the DevCon will happen very soon. Thank you, guys. Happy Christmas. Have a new year, and talk to you later on. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, everyone.